Hi, my name is Katie Joe, and I am a best-selling author. I'm also an artist. I am a worldwide international speaker. I have traveled the world speaking to audiences about sovereign spirituality for the South, and I also am cast on Writers Island TV and Legacy Makers TV, which is debuting in 2025. I teach a lot about finding your own spiritual core and code in your life because so many times we don't realize that what we are receiving, what we believe to be true, is not necessarily truth or testimony, but that it's simply belief. And so, one of the analogies that I give in my upcoming book is if I'm walking down the street and I see a red car pass by, and I look at my watch and it's 2:30 p.m., then I simply recognize, I go, oh, I've seen a red car at 2 p.m. or 2:30 p.m., whatever time I said. And then I go on my way. Well, later on, if I'm being interviewed by police and they say to me, did you see a red car? Yes. What time was it? And I give them the time. That would be considered a testimony. Now, if they also interview my friends who I've told about the experience that I had, and they said, did Katie see a red car? And they say, yes. They say, did you see her see the red car? They say, well, no. Did you see the red car? Well, no. Is that testimony? No, they just believe me when I told them that I saw the red car. So belief and testimony in religious arenas get really, really mixed up. Because when we read the Bible or the scriptures or the Bhagavad Gita or whatever it is that you read for your scripture source or spiritual writing source, it doesn't make it true. It doesn't mean that you have testimony. It means just like my friends would have trusted that I saw the red car, and it very well could be true. It's not testimony, it's belief, and they can be really hard to discern, especially if you feel really, really passionate about it. So you may or may not believe in the truth of something that you've read of the spiritual writings or the commandments or anything that you've been told to do, and you said this works for me, but that's not testimony. A testimony would be I'm living these things, I'm experiencing for myself, I'm witnessing for myself this works in my life, and that's a testimony that you could absolutely share. I see a lot of people that move through faith transitions, leaving religion or going into religion, vice versa, and they're throwing out everything that is their foundation before. And I, in the culture that I live, which is a very conservative Christian culture, there's a lot of people that are leaving their faith origin or their origin faith, which means what they were taught in childhood. And I see them often just having this complete let me get the word right, destabilization of understanding what they believe, what's true and what's not true. And it's really all this misunderstanding of belief versus testimony. Because if I were to ask anybody walking down the street, do you believe in healthy living? Do you think that that is a good way to live? They would say, yeah, absolutely, I do. And when it gets mixed up with religion into the concept of wrong or right, good or bad, that's when things get murky. But it's actually not murky at all. It's, do you believe in healthy living? Do you believe in moderation and in all the things? And is there scientific data that even proves that? Does that mean that you live it? Yes or no? That's different. But is that something that you would say, yes, this is a good code and way of life? So when we remove ourselves from the paradigm of right and wrong, of testimony of true or untrue, we simply move into this alignment of self and say, how do I choose to live my life? And a lot of times those things match what we were taught in our religions that were the guidelines from the religions that we came from. But now we're viewing it from a lens of not right and wrong, good or bad, of discernment and awareness and choice. Because when we follow codes and ways to live our lives, that we're saying, I have to do this because it's right, I have to do it because God said so, then we're doing that from a level of slavery. We're doing that from a level of force and control versus taking something and saying, when I look at this, do I think that this is a good way for me? And this can apply to basically anything. So, like in religions, a lot of times they'll teach to pray in the morning and pray at night. Well, if I went to ask anybody, do you feel like it's of benefit to once a day, twice a day, to sit quietly and connect to the internal divine source that you truly are? Would that be of benefit for your life? Everyone would say yes. I mean, business mentors outside of religious propagation, they'll say, hey, listen, sit down and write your goals in the morning, write your goals at night, connect to that focus of your spiritual alignment. And they don't call it spiritual alignment, but we see this guidance. Does that benefit your life? Can you manifest if you do that? And the answer is yes. So when we start to take these concepts that we've thrown out because they were introduced to us through religion, and if we've left that origin of faith, then we're saying none of that's true. Well, that's not necessarily fair, because what I see in religions is tons of service work. What I see in religions is tons of truths being taught, but where it gets contorted is anywhere that people have used truth with these absolution phrases like God said so, the prophet said so, the bishop said so, the pastor said so, because then that's taking away the authority of the individual. But if I were to introduce a concept such as, hey, it would be wise and discerning to be very aware of who you share sexual intimacy with. And we move this from right and wrong, but we move this into, that brings forth tons of emotional attachments. Biologically, when we are physically intimate with people, we emotionally get intertwined with them. It brings in the risk of pregnancy, or it brings in the risk of sexually transmitted diseases. So if you are going to engage in this physical intimacy with another, be very discerning with if you do. And that outside of religion, everybody would say, yeah, that's good advice. So again, when we move out of the authoritarian where I have to, or I'm sacrificing because of this, and we simply say, is this wise guidance from a wise sage? Yes. But then we can also take some of the things that we're seeing in religion that are being done and being propagated upon culture under the guise of the authoritative ideal of God said so, bishop said so, scriptures say so, things that, that are oppressive. And we go, hold on a second. Is this something that I believe in? Because when we remove ourselves from the oppressive, authoritative, I have to do this because to do this means I'm good, or this is right or wrong, or God said so. And we actually pick that up and we look at it for ourselves and say, is this something that I actually believe? And one of the biggest ones for me is, do I believe that women don't have say in their lives? Do I believe that women should always defer to the masculine authority? That because I am born female, that I inherently must defer to the male counterpart for decisions? And almost all of us would say no, and yet that's taught and preached quite often. So my encouragement with this, as we move on from this podcast, is to simply ask you or encourage us all to move into that space and take issues that come up and ask those questions that way and evaluate them, because that's how we know who we truly are. And that doesn't mean we leave a religion, and it doesn't mean that we stay. It means that we know who we are, and we are coming from a place of sovereignty and choice within ourselves. Hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you found value.